All right. Well, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today and jumping on to watch an interview with Rhonda K. Velders and Michael Helminiak. And I'm excited about this because Illuminated Pathways Family Therapy has done such great work, and our relationship with this individual has truly enhanced our practice and allowed us to do great things with our clients, even together. And the idea of collaboration, we hear about it often, but we don't always um, truly kind of engage in it because maybe we get a little bit fearful of the idea of what that might look like. But in this case, I'm really excited about the fact that when I reached out to him, he was very open to the idea, and since then, it's just been an amazing journey. Illuminated Pathways is from Houston, Texas, and we are very grateful for someone who partners with us, a similar level of care as I give my clients. And the beautiful part is those who work at Illuminated Pathways also get to benefit from this very same relationship within their own client sessions. So, as we are a fast growing practice, we will be expanding across the city of Houston. We'll be opening next week in Conroe, Texas, and then the end of the month we'll be in Sugar Land, Texas. So, we'll have three locations, very exciting times ahead of us, and we look forward to seeing even what Michael will be able to do for us in all of the locations, wherever we might be in the state of Texas, should that happen for us, which I believe it will. Um, I really consider him a very dear friend. I'm very excited about our relationship. It is just a truly a heartfelt, sincere touch that when I reached out to him to see if he would be willing to be interviewed today, or collaborate together, even how we care for our clients, he was immediately with a yes. So at this moment, I'd like to introduce to you Michael Hominiak. And if you don't mind, Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself, say a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Opened up a private practice named Helm Psychiatry in Houston, Texas. I've got over 15 years of experience in mental health and emergency care settings, both as a registered nurse and as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I opened up my own practice because I wanted to be able to give a higher level of care to outpatient psychiatric individuals. The norm that I've noticed has usually been people getting kind of shoved into a treatment plan for about 23, 25, 27 patients a day for providers. And there's no way that a provider can give you the level of care that you deserve with that kind of a workload. You usually see them kind of rushing you through a standard list of questions like, are you suicidal? Are you homicidal? Are you having any hallucinations? How's your sleep? They don't get to ask you the other details. They don't get to understand like the contributing factors for why you're stressed out or why you might be depressed or why you might be having problems sleeping. And I wanted to really be able to give that to the people that I work with. And I wanted to give kind of a holistic, globalized approach to treatment, which is why I was really glad when Rhonda reached out to me to do kind of a collaborative relationship with care.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know. Have you realized it's been 2 years?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Maybe
gone by
maybe
quick.
even yeah, maybe even a little bit more than 2 years. So it's been really cool. So I really thank you so much for um, kind of giving me a different look at what psychiatry can really look like instead of it really always looking like a pill pushing piece. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're really a different breed than your whole industry. And I could probably say that about myself too.
Yeah, unfortunately for different reasons on both sides, it just seems like psychiatry and therapy, there has never been a really good mesh between the two. Like whether it's due to being overworked or due to differences in perspective, it just has never really seemed to come together. And the only people that really suffer from that are the people we're actually trying to help. So
Right.
I'd like to change that. I'd like to give kind of a different perspective so people feel like they're getting what they're actually coming to us for.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, I don't know. I believe that over our time together that we've spent in the room, whether me at your place, you're here, or over virtual, I believe that we have some very similar shared beliefs. And so I came up with a few, and I believe that you're a holistic person That's your first approach, I would think. Although I know that you can prescribe medications, but I really believe we really try to help our people realize that if they do the things that are needed, they can actually help heal themselves. Are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I kind of work under the principle that if someone isn't getting the job done with five medications, then they're not going to get the job done with six or seven. If they're getting the not getting the job done with three, they're not going to get it done with four or five. So I would rather focus on figuring out the other things that can be addressed. Whether or not those options are realistic, that's something we can kind of explore. But
Mhm.
meds shouldn't be the sole thing you rely on to fix how you feel. They should be kind of a crutch in most cases. In very few cases, like certain mental illnesses, they are definitely recommended to be taken consistently. But a lot of cases, you come across it's situational. People, they're dealing with a rough time or they need something to kind of help get them through a rough patch with like a marriage or job insecurity or something else. And that's not something to just rely solely on a pill for.
Right, I would agree. I think sometimes too, in those instances too, it could be grief. It's really a hard rush into their life. They just
Yeah.
need tools to help them kind of balance until they get out of that, whatever that might look like, even. So I agree. The mind, body, spirit integration too, that really kind of made my heart really happy when that kind of came across one session. I can't even remember when, but I'm like, we might not be exactly on the same page in everything, but we're stinking close, and I'm pretty happy about that. So, and that makes me feel good because on the inside, I really think that we have the truth to help people. And and while we take the approaches we do to get to that truth, it's not pushed upon them. It's really a guided place, a guided way to get them to hear what we might provide for them. We're going to give them some challenging things. We're going to push them a little bit, but I think that that idea of that integration, that it can really be a well-rounded piece there.
I definitely agree. And I'd like to stress, though, that there's a difference between imposing something on someone and bringing unhealthy habits or behaviors to their attention. People might be kind of falling into patterns that are not the best for them or their mental state, and they are either unable or unwilling to recognize it on their own. So when we try to bring it up, when we try to help them see this, this isn't an imposition.
Mhm.
This is trying to help them see best pathway to get the results that they're looking for.
Well, and that's probably really good for this next point where it's ethical, evidence-based approach for sure, right? And so
Yes.
I really like that too. So I think that that's great. So cross those T's, dot those I's, but really it's important to let people truly hear, I mean, like one of the things that I would probably try to say to someone to kind of get their attention, especially if they play an instrument, is if you play your scales, right? And you practice it with the wrong note each time. I can't say you didn't practice, but I can't tell you it's correct, right? So we got to kind of get to that approach or that perspective or the truth, right? So that that can be restored and refixed and or get fixed, and kind of restore that. So I really I think that's great. So that evidence-based practices. So there's several options that I use over here at Illuminated Pathways. So I think that they complement what we do together in the room. Um, so I don't know. I'm not the medical side, right? So evidence-based practices is please do no harm, right? Well, I kind of adopt that myself, right? But it just seems like it's kind of a hard thing to see these days that everybody operates that same way. I want it to be that way, but it's not always true. What is your take on that?
Uh, I would actually be in agreement. Can't speak for other prescribers, but it's just been personal experience that there's been a tendency for providers in general, whether there's prescribers or therapists, to be overworked, not given the resources, and as a result, not able to go into detail to help the people that they're there to help. Uh, this causes them to overlook simple things that could be potentially contributing to their problems, whether or not that's sleep, whether or not that's nutrition, whether or not is due to job related stress, even a tendency to try to look at things solely through a psychiatric lens, solely through, oh, it must be something mentally ill that's causing the problem. It must be, schizophrenia. It must be ADHD. A lot of the times, it's actually something that's being, if either caused or worsened by something physical going on with the person. Like a lot of ADHD symptoms, they can actually be related to something autoimmune. A lot of depression symptoms, you can see a lot of overlap between depression symptoms and vitamin D deficiencies, or alcoholism causes vitamin deficiencies in the body, which cause problems with memory or problems with mood stability. So it's not just a good idea to focus on thinking this is just a mental illness. It's a good idea to think in terms of the overall perspective for the person and help them see that it's kind of irresponsible to just approach it from saying, oh, there must be something wrong with this person's brain.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then clarifying the that spiritual care is in most cases it's client led for the most part. And I would agree with that, right? But there are times where in my personal walk with the Lord that it's approached delicately, but usually it's done in a way where I feel like it's the timing or the Holy Spirit is pressing upon me that I might should say something here, but culturally respectful. I think that happens across the board. It should have been this way long before the last few years that became such a push. But it should have been happening. It's part of what we do. We all bleed the same color. We all breathe the same way. It's like, goodness gracious, like just love everybody, but treat them with respect, right? Give them that dignity. And then, and again, I guess we could go back to that idea of like, it's really not being imposing upon them, but it's really kind of really giving them a perspective, maybe really looking at what's going on and giving them different ways of seeing things. So that was very good. Is there anything else you'd like to add in our opening?
No, I think you did a great job. You've been
All
covering
righty.
everything perfectly.
Okay, good. So, well, this video or this interview, I guess, is called Illuminated Healing: Holistic Physical and Spiritual Integration and Collaboration, Mental Health Care. And so I'm really excited to kind of continue on and just kind of see what we got going here. So, um, holistic care doesn't replace evidence-based practice, it completes it. So, with that being said, um, I believe like for me, kind of give a little bit of a background. 2015, I ended up with a serious black mold problem, and it nearly took me out. And it took me about 18 months to recover. And I was probably in about that 16-month period of that 18 months. Actually, probably took me a little longer, but I began to recover at 18 months. But within that first 15 months, between this multiple surgeries, the PICC line, all the various different kinds of medications, I was at one pharmacy only, one pharmacy, 180 different medications over that 15 months. That's not where I had compounded medications. That's not where, like, it was insane. So my body became very toxic. And with that, then I got mental health and fatigue and that chronic fatigue. Like, that was really, really rough. But then I reached out to my friend who is a chiropractor, and she introduced me to Juice Plus, and that's when I began like what else did I have to lose? There was nothing more they could do for me. It was beginning the infection of the black mold was going through the brain barrier, and so I was really really sick, really sick. So the idea of holistic care really was turned on to me in 2016, and an idea of really realizing that your body can heal itself and do the things that it needs to do. So that's when I really began to change what I did in my practice and teach that to other people. I'm a sole believer in the whole food nutrition and the nutraceuticals that come along with that. I also believe that blood work's necessary to know what levels are what and what you can do, what you can't do. All that stuff's necessary. But it's very rare now that I will take a prescription. Very rare. Now, that doesn't mean like I can get a sinus infection. I'm going to go get an antibiotic. I'm not going to be stupid about it. But I'm not just going to be quick to the medication. I'm going to do everything possible to do the holistic pieces nutritionally and through the nutraceutical pieces. So, with that being said, Kind of going into my lens on that, gave you a little bit of my story, just to kind of let you know, like, why I'm pretty much a big proponent of this approach. I believe that the best way to integrate health is to teach people that they can go do these things and really actually help heal themselves. But they, even when they don't feel like it, they still got to go. They got to still do it. Otherwise, the body's going to deteriorate, the mind's going to fall apart. I know I was there. So like I really had some serious thoughts that a lot of my clients come in for. Like I was not in a good place. So that I do know that there's various things that can happen when major illnesses come into your life like that, right? Something that's totally took. I think I was in this particular rental place that we lived in. I think I was there maybe I think 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm sitting at my job as a clinical director for adolescents and mental health. And I couldn't hold my head up. My head just kept falling. I just could not hold it up. It was like, wow, what is going on? But it took 6 months for them to find the black mold. And so that trauma in itself, or retelling your story, like I don't feel good, what's wrong with me? And then oh, it's all in your head, and oh, we can't see anything wrong. Like, I mean, and it really can wear on you, and that can be traumatic in itself. But then if we take other pieces in our life where we have other issues that go on, maybe it could be a childhood history, it could be an adult history, it could be just a job loss even, right? Where it can really kind of do some things. So, but some of the things that I do here at Illuminated Pathways is I promote with my staff also. Everyone works very well with just about everyone that walks through the door because they are trained in all the things that I have normally seen in my own before I had my staff. So everyone knows how to handle couples. Everyone knows how to handle, or they're beginning, most of them mostly know how to handle family and family systems, and then trauma. So everyone's trauma informed. So there's some really cool things. Towards the end of the video, I will like share what we're going to be able to get to do this next summer. So I'm pretty excited about that. The meaning making values, like I really want not just us as therapists in the room to kind of help them, but I want them to make meaning of their own situation. While I really feel it's important to help guide them, but it's not my job to give an opinion. Now I can give them like an idea, facilitate a perspective, and help them kind of get there. But it's not my job to affirm them. It's not my job to like tell them what they should do. So they have to bring their own meaning into what's going on. So kind of getting them to that place might be difficult at first, but it's really good when we get there. But then that piece of like even who I am, right? Oftentimes in our own industry, it is such a rough place where like we're considered, if we do any type of faith-based counseling, which is who we are, we're considered doing conversion therapy. So I get really annoyed with that because it's like saying, okay, well now I can go into the therapy room, but I got to remove half of me while I'm there. Just so you're going to get half the work, right? Like you're going to get a half professional. So I really kind of struggle with that. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be able to feel confident and bold and emboldened to take care of the people that God puts in front of me, and that I'm able to do the things. And He saved my life about 10 years ago. I really do believe that. And I really believe that because of that, it's really changed my perspective and how do I do mental health care and physical care and spiritual care, all of those things. So that whole body approach is pretty critical for me. What about you, Michael? What is your lens?
My lens tends to be a little bit more on the practical side, I would say. I focus more on what's right in front of me, what people can see as, you know, things that are modifiable, things that will show them concrete improvements. I mean, to take, for example, like the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a big spike in people complaining of depression and anxiety symptoms and suicidal thoughts during that time because suddenly they went from being social and outside and enjoying life to isolated indoors and they were supposed to maintain like a 6 foot distance between each other. But
Right.
they would come to us, they would expect anxiety and depression symptoms to be managed solely with medication without considering the decline in the quality of life that they've experienced and not really looking at the things that they could do to make their quality of life reasonably better while dealing with the restrictions that were still on them. I mean, these are people that would come to us and they would sit in front of the TV whenever they weren't working in front of the computer in their home. They would binge watch, TikTok for 2 or 3 hours at a time, ignoring their partner, and they would end up broken up, and the partner would end up moving out. Antidepressants don't help that. Anti-anxiety medications don't fix the underlying behaviors that are going to trigger that anxiety and depression. What they do is they make it easier to deal with, but ultimately it's up to you to identify the things that you're doing or the things that are causing your symptoms to get worse and modify them where you can. If you're isolating yourself and you're not talking to people and you're not going out, of course you're not going to feel better. People are social creatures. They are not meant to live in seclusion. If you are working a night shift for 2, 3, 4 years in a row and sleeping during the day, you're not getting the sunlight exposure that you need to produce vitamin D. You're not getting an adequate cycle with your sleep cycle because your body's internal clock is thrown off. You're not getting adequate rest usually because a lot of the times things that will disrupt our sleep tend to take place during the daytime as well. I mean, speaking firsthand, I lived inside of an apartment complex where when I was working night shift, you would have repairs going on. You would hear loud crashes, bangs, loud construction equipment in the middle of the daytime and wake up. You wouldn't get the sleep that you needed to function well. And then, nutrition wise, you end up working like high intensity, fast paced jobs where you're expected to sacrifice quality of life while you're there. And you end up eating a lot of fast food. So your gut health ends up suffering. You end up having problems with developing the internal flora that actually produces that serotonin, the chemical in your body that helps with depression function. And it's trying to fix something like that with just an antidepressant. It's kind of like trying to press your foot on the gas pedal without any gas in the gas tank. The medication, it acts on what's there. It doesn't fix a decline in it. It doesn't fix a problem with the engine. It only deals with a specific part of the process. So trying to just push your foot down on the gas pedal when there are other things that need to be fixed, it's not going to get you the results that you're looking for. It's going to leave you feeling frustrated. It's going to make you want to quit. It's going to make you have a negative, outlook on mental health treatment in general. And then you end up getting frustrated and you feel like you're hopeless because your situation hasn't improved. Medication is meant to be a tool, not the only tool. It's not meant to completely overtake any other responsibility or any other intervention that you can do to fix your situation.
I totally agree. I really do. It's one of the other reasons why I like your perspectives too, because when I'm in a kind of a bind, I'm like, man, am I missing something? I'm going to call Michael. And so oftentimes, that when I tell them I'd like you to reach out to Michael because I think that he might be a really good help at this little stuck spot we're in. Well, I don't want to be on medicine. Well, I don't want you on it either. So, but I still
No,
think calling him would be really good. I think that's really such an odd thing for people. Like they go, so you want me to call him but not go on medicine? Yeah, it's really true. If you need it, we'll figure it out. We'll put you on it. But like, what if it's just like we needed a little bit of help and guidance, whatever, right? So it's really kind of neat to kind of see them. They go, I don't want medicine. I don't either. But I think he could help us, right? So I think that's one of the things I really like about this. The chiropractor that I was talking about, my friend, she was actually in Denton, Texas. And when I used to live in Salina, Texas, just near there, we used to go to church together. And so I called her one time, and I don't even know that she did Juice Plus, honestly. And so and I think it was July 3rd, 2016. I was just told by my doctors that there's nothing more they can really do. They've done all the surgeries they could do. The next thing they could do is scrape my lungs, right? So it was really bad. I was in really bad shape. And so I called her, and then my husband and I talked to her for probably a good couple of hours from here. We live down here at this time now, and she is the one that introduced me to the Juice Plus. So this is not a Juice Plus ad or commercial, but it's I believe, the thing that began to restore the cells in my body as I got off all that medication. And I won't go a day without it ever again in my life. I just won't. So, but in that process of me being here, I really like chiropractic care. I really do. I think it's a really good thing for your body. And so I was given a name, Dr. Amy McDaniel. And so she and I, like now, I don't know, since 2016, I guess this will be our 10th year knowing each other. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so she now helps take care of some of my clients, right? So she joins us on like she's in the area on Wednesdays here and so she helps take care of those that need some extra pieces, you know. So now when I get a sinus infection, I just call her and I get an acupuncture. I
Okay.
would choose, you know, most times I'm able to make it without an antibiotic. I promise you, it's just amazing. So this whole body health piece, right, is really critical. So Dr. Amy and I, maybe one day, you know, and maybe we'll capture you a few days a week. We're going to try to get where we're all in the same place at the same time, taking care of God's people. I think that's pretty cool. So
Okay.
addressing misconceptions for sure, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of weird things are being said, but holistic does not mean we're anti-medication, and spiritual does not mean it's religious coercion or conversion therapy. Thank you very much, right?
Hmm.
It's just a way for us to be who we are in the room, be authentic with our people so we can be real with them, but it also give them offerings of whatever else might could be available that they're never even tried before. So, what do you think about the misconceptions that might be out there?
I definitely agree. Part of what I do during the very first meetings with individuals is I do what's called a biopsychosocial assessment. And besides looking at symptoms, and I look at history, I look at, what's their work schedule like? How many hours are they working? What other obligations do they have? What's their diet like? When's the last time they got lab work done? What else has been checked out? Et cetera. And part of the goal with that is to help reduce the amount of medication that's needed because you shouldn't
Hmm.
have to be taking 10 pills to feel better. And,
Yeah.
I've to give you kind of an example, I've had one individual recently that came to me that reported multiple failures with antidepressant medications over the years. Just like half a dozen antidepressant medications did not work. And eventually I'm doing the assessment on this person, and find out that there's never been testing for something called an MTHFR gene mutation. What that is it's a mutation that can affect the processing of folic acid in the body, folate. When you have problems with that, it can cause problems with your mood. It can cause problems with your body's ability to remember things very well, cause problems with other symptoms related to depression as well. And antidepressants, they don't fix that. That's something that you need to rely on other things like supplementation for like L-methylfolate supplements to help kind of boost the amount of folic acid that is put in your body so it can process more of it. Or like vitamin D deficiencies. I've had plenty of people where like a normal range for vitamin D is usually 30 to 100 depending on the lab that you get it done at. Even low normal levels like 30 to 50, you can still be symptomatic, have problems with
Right.
concentration, with energy, with difficulty getting out of bed. And people don't realize this. So they end up thinking there must be something mentally wrong with me that I need, an antidepressant for when there's literally something that can be fixed in the body to help them feel better. I do support the use of psychiatric medications. I do, but everything has a place for it, and it shouldn't be the be all and end all to fix a person's situation. And same
Exactly.
with what you said about spiritual beliefs not meaning religious coercion. People can come in to, for example, a Christian therapist and with completely different belief system in place. And the idea is trying to learn how to speak with them within their idiom, help them understand based with what you and your personal experiences are as well. It's not that you're trying to convert someone. It's not that you're trying to make them think like you think. It's about finding a bridge between two different perspectives so that they understand better.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, the next section that I wanted us to kind of talk about would be the physical health as mental health also, right? Normalize integrative medical thinking, how physical health affects psychiatric symptoms, and just some things like that, right? So I know for me, there are just different things I will offer people. I really believe that 20 to 30 minutes of exercise every day is like taking an antidepressant every day, right? I also teach them that serotonin is made in your gut. And they're pretty surprised with that information. And I also teach them that through the nutraceuticals that we tend to offer over here, homeopathics. There's a homeopathic product that I use from partner.co that actually helps balance hormones for men and women. It's not just a women's product. In fact, my husband and I use it every day. And so, as we even are getting older and aging, getting wiser, and so as we are doing those things together, I think that's something that's we've really realized it's really helped us with our energy also. It's really been kind of cool. But it also helps with inflammation. Anytime you use, for me, the things that I promote here, and I get all my staff to try to get on, they're learning too, but just really promote this type of care, present it for them, give it as an option. You can't make anybody do it, but you can at least teach them. So I always say, people die for they perish, people perish for the lack of knowledge, right? So they just, the idea is like, let's give them the knowledge and then let them make the adult decision or whatever decision they need to make for their family. But at the same time, we should be able to tell them those things. So that's why I promote like even some things with Advocare. I mean, advocare.com, you can go there, Juice Plus, you can talk with me. Even some of these other products that sit on my shelf. I do that, I make it available so people don't have to run away and figure out what else to do somewhere else and maybe forget or whatever. So, but those are some things that I do and I really believe that they're super helpful. There used to be a time that even in my field that we were told we weren't even supposed to do that kind of stuff. And so I said, well, I buy books. I recommend books to people to buy to do work with. Why can't I like teach them how to take care of themselves, for their hand to their mouth, right? Like it's really kind of wild. So there actually is room for that as long as there's evidence base for each of those products to do the things that they claim to do. And we're not just doing something to make people feel like they are obligated. So those are things that also as a in the field, I want to inspire other clinicians like myself to know that you can, but you do your homework. Don't just do it just because, oh, I'm going to make a buck. This is not about making a buck. It's about helping people take care of themselves the best way that they can learn how to do because they've never had probably somebody tell them how to do that, which is very true actually. So what do you think about some of that stuff?
So, as far as the education for our clients go, I definitely agree. It's good to educate them. It's part of our responsibility is to empower them to take more control over their self and their life and to be an active advocate for their own care. They have the right to decide what to do. It's not our job to necessarily fix the client. It's our job to give them the tools to understand how to fix themselves and let them make the decisions themselves.
Right.
That
Right.
said, it's also their responsibility to deal with the consequences of those choices.
Yeah, that's
So
so
if
true.
it so yeah, so if
Mhm.
they choose not to follow through on it, that's on them. And you know, seeking additional answers or trying to tap a dry well, for example, is not going to work if you're ignoring the advice that you're being given.
Right.
And I would also maybe point out that when it comes to treatment, a treatment approach, there's a difference between validating someone's feelings, validating their emotions and what they're going through, and acknowledging them. Someone can come into you, they can tell you that, they've got these feelings that they're angry or they're depressed or they're dealing with a coworker who absolutely hates them. And it's true, we're not there to see what's going on there. We're taking this information at second hand. We're taking their report off of this. But validation of those feelings kind of implies that inherently that there is a truth to what they're saying. Acknowledgement in, is recognizing that they're feeling them, but leaving open the possibility that maybe those feelings aren't actually accurate, and maybe there's room to kind of adjust the perspective.
Right.
I mean, some people, this is something that happens in therapy, or even with psychiatric providers. They see or hear things that their provider is telling them, and they react very negatively to it for one reason or another. Sometimes it reminds them of past experiences with other providers. Sometimes they're bringing in baggage from their past that's kind of influencing how they react to specific types of people. But even though they're experiencing those feelings, and even though those feelings are real for them, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're appropriate for the situation, or that what they're getting from the situation is what we're trying to teach them. So
I really agree with that. Let me throw in here. So there was this client I got, is a male client, and he came in, and then this woman came in with him. And I'm like, I didn't anticipate her coming in. She's not in the registry, right, to be there.
yeah,
And so she follows him back, and I said, "Do you want her here?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's my ex-wife." And I'm like, "Okay, are we supposed to see both of them or just her?" And he says, "Well, she wants to see how we do therapy." And I'm like, "Well, are you okay with her here?" And he says, "Yeah, it's okay." Well, it turns out, right, basically in what you said, when you validate, you actually help people make a decision that maybe they might not have ever wanted to make. And this is the case where that happened, right? So this particular woman went to a therapist, and there was some infidelity that was going on with this relationship, right? But
mm,
that therapist told her to get a divorce, and she did. And she didn't want that, but she did it. She regretted it. So that's why she was in the room. So then I said, "Well, are you interested in trying to figure out if you guys want to fix this marriage, or get it back together?" They're remarried, by the way.
okay, good for them.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, right? Because you can't, this is why we can't affirm that validation, right? We just can't. I mean, we can
yeah,
help them kind of get there and navigate, but like we should never be telling well, unless there are certain times, unless
yeah,
you are in a very, and it's apparent, like you got bruises and you got an arm in a sling and things are happening and it's no safe at home, right? Like that would be a different story. And then I'll get you to have a hobby taking care of you, like helping you get to a safe place, right? A safe home for
mm,
domestic violence, right? That is a true thing. That is absolutely a real thing. But in this case, like just because she was unhappy, her husband did do those things. And then they became really angry at each other and hateful, right? But through that process, they just needed somebody to help them give tools to help shake them up a little bit and get their marriage back on track. And so that now, and just recently I got it, no lie, I promise you, it'd probably been a year, and I got a text from him to, I don't know, I love when my clients follow up with me. I love it. Got a text from
likewise.
him, I want to say maybe 5 days ago, maybe 5 days ago, since after the first. And he gave me an update on how they're doing. And I didn't reach out. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't want to stalk them, right? But like, I love it that we can build that rapport with them and they want to follow up with you and let you know how they're doing. So, yes, I so agree with that, right? Absolutely. So,
And
go ahead.
some cases though, where clients bring in lingering feelings and memories from other relationships with people, that the people that we remind them of,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it's a friend or a family member or a spouse. But these people sort of come in, they sort of project this image onto you because they make this association for one reason or another. Maybe something about how you're dressed reminds them of it, maybe your demeanor reminds them of it, but that reaction colors their entire influence of, or their entire perspective of how you're able to engage with them. And the result tends to be that it interferes with our ability to help these individuals, and it tends to make them mistrusting of whatever we tell them.
Sure.
In some cases it makes them there's a term, a phrase I like. It makes them constitutionally incapable of absorbing the material you're covering. That,
Yeah.
maybe another person is a better fit, exactly, or maybe this is an issue of this person learning how to process those older feelings first before they're ready to teach. They're ready to deal with whatever you're trying to teach them. But these sort of things, these are the other sort of things that I'm talking about that need to be addressed when you're trying to help these people, not just, forcing medications down their mouth, not just telling them that they're anxious or depressed or that they're bipolar, not just telling them that they've got PTSD, but maybe recognizing the traumas that they've got, the experiences that they've got, and helping them understand how those experiences are informing their decision making for their current situations.
Yes, I agree. And then on top of that, then, a lot of times, and I'm sure you've experienced this well too, especially with your clinical and inpatient work that you did, right? Exercise is so critical, right? So if
Yes,
we're bombarding ourselves with all of these things, or maybe they're not something that, you're causing for sure, right? It could be
yes,
just the circumstances of life that are not any of your fault. They just happen and then they create a reaction out of you. Then that creates that place, well, I don't want to do anything. So now I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to go to church and I'm not going to go out, I'm not going to go for a walk. I'm just going to get a blanket and I'm just going to go to bed and I'm going to go sleep, right? But then what happens is then your body just breaks down even more. And so really, truly trying to teach people those grounding techniques, and part of those is really being active, right? Just go do something different. You don't have to go to get a gym membership. Just go for a walk, or doesn't have to be laborious. Just go for a leisure walk, do something, get out. And that idea of all of that too, I think that that's critical too, to kind of help them understand that they are in charge of those things, right? They are in charge, So if they don't want to keep feeling what they're feeling, our recommendations are recommendations to help them kind of get into those places that I think will be very, very helpful for them long term. It might be slow in the beginning, but eventually they're going to start feeling better and feeling better and feeling better. And the next thing they're like, wow, I feel really great. I'm like, I know, it's awesome to see this. So now that we got like somatic feelings, I see this a lot more with kids and teens. And then I do see it with some of my younger adults. I hate to categorize, but we are like the millennials and on down, right? I see this more than I do with my older people. And I don't know if it's just kind of like because we had social emotional learning in school, always everybody's taught like how are you feeling and versus, the schools became very tapped into like how everybody was feeling and not as much education. And so then everybody became like all these emotions. Oh, maybe my stomach does hurt, or I got this headache and oh, I need to take a nap and I don't want to do anything, like it is like all these different things and all these somatic feelings that not necessarily are true to really what's happening. We just as a behavior began to see that and then thought, oh, that's part of the reason why we are whatever. But I see that more with my kiddos,
yeah.
where they really, and then really what it's doing is it's masking maybe some anxiety or attachment disorder or some sort of thing that they now like, or maybe food. Like I have a young boy who's got aversion to vegetables, to touch them, to put them near his mouth. Like he didn't have to have him in his mouth and he can throw up. So he's developed this, right? So the somatic piece that he feels that the vegetable is going to make him throw up. So now we're working on exposure therapy and flooding and trying to get some of those things done. So those somatic symptoms can actually be very real when really they're like a false statement. So, those are some things that I see, and other things too. But I mean, but I just kind of think, so when you get a client or a patient, I guess for you, when you get them and you start seeing those things, what are some things that you help them recognize?
First, what I usually try to do is I try to help them understand the idea of building a level of emotional resilience. You're absolutely right. We get people that come in that they are dealing with all these stressors. They get these sort of somatic symptoms. get told that, that there's a lot wrong with the world, and nothing is going right, and they need to do something about it or it will never get better, but they aren't taught how to develop the emotional capability of dealing with hardship, dealing with how to process these feelings instead of avoiding them, and basically doing what I call like the Three Stooges approach. They try to shove everything into the closet until it all comes spilling out instead of actually cleaning the room.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what ends up happening is they end up so overwhelmed with that final spill out that it causes them so much more stress in the long run than if they had just taken the time to learn how to build the skills early on. But sometimes these people, they just get so focused on learning how to get through the immediate moment that they don't understand that these are also moments to teach themselves the skills to deal with this more effectively. Instead
Hmm.
of taking the time to think about it, it's I'm going to avoid thinking about it. Instead of taking the time to, you know, check in with yourself and understand what you're feeling in the moment, understand those somatic reactions that you're getting in response to things. Yeah, it's actually one thing I try to teach people with anxiety, to stop themselves when they feel like they're getting actually anxious and do kind of an assessment of every feeling in their body at the time. Is your heart racing?
Hmm.
Is your neck or shoulders getting tense? Are
Right.
your palms sweating? Because if you can identify these things, if you can learn to pick up on the cues, then you stop feeling quite as overwhelmed because you're able to pick up and recognize what's actually happening to you in the moment and learn when to step away and when to do the other things that can help you feel better.
Yeah, I agree. Just to recap that, right? When we begin to listen to our body, this is
Yeah.
things I teach them too, right? Like I agree, so agree. Your body tells on itself. It does. And so if you listen to those things that are happening, then you actually can start to see, oh wow, those symptoms really do make sense. Wow, this, like, okay, now I can actually change them. And it empowers them that they feel like they can get, and they can take care of themselves. I love that part. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So, all right. So now into the next segment, right? So, you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm having fun. This is great. Yes. Okay. So the next segment is that spirit, meaning, and identity in clinical work. So the purpose is to address spiritual care, ethically and clinically. So I'll let you you have our little script there. Kind of go ahead and kind of start us out, and I'll cap it up.
Okay. Uh, Maybe it'd be helpful to kind of approach this from a case study sort of perspective. We've got a mutual client, or actually a mutual former client of ours, that came to us in a certain amount of distress. They were dealing with an addiction to pornography. They were dealing with problems with multiple family members, problems with, feeling like they could integrate as an adult into the world, and even problems with just learning how to develop meaningful connections with someone they might be interested in as a romantic partner. We started kind of both jointly assessing this person. We started talking about symptoms. We started talking about the relationships with people in their household. We started identifying what their sense of purpose was, what was causing them suffering, how they view themselves in connection to their family members or the world around them. And as we were doing this, we also started noticing certain patterns with lack of development in interpersonal skills, feelings of powerlessness, feelings of the ability to function on their own. And one thing that you kind of pointed out about this individual is that you noticed that there was a period of vulnerability in this person's past that left them open to being kind of manipulated by a certain group. And this group sort of became like almost a surrogate family for this person, taking control and making it so that this person didn't really have to make decisions for themselves. They would devote their times and energy to meetings with this group. They would seek romantic connections through recommendations of the leaders of this group, instead of learning how to do it on their own, they sort of use this as their basis of identity and kind of a source of hope for thriving spiritually, even though this same organization was also kind of responsible for preventing this person from growing and developing into who they actually wanted to be. And ultimately, we tried to confront this individual, and we tried to kind of bring up the concerns. We tried to bring up anecdotal reports of what we found out about this organization from online or from other spiritual leaders, and figure out if they were able to see it themselves. In some cases, such a talk, it can go very, very positively. But in a lot of cases, the person isn't ready to hear what you're having to say.
Right.
And, for one reason or another, whether or not it's lack of confidence in it or overabundance of anxiety, or whether or not there is something else going on that's preventing them feeling like they can take that next step themselves, they fall back into old unhealthy patterns. And you see this across the board. It's not necessarily just with organizations. You see this with people falling into old patterns after they feel like a failed job attempt. They suddenly go back out and party, or a failed relationship. They suddenly go back out and engage in kind of unhealthy behaviors in the singles market.
Right.
And
Right.
it what ends up happening is they sort of lose their sense of identity. They end up suffering internally. They end up losing hope and becoming kind of biased or jaded towards the possibility of a possible future that works
Mhm.
out for them.
Mhm.
And I mean, sometimes they have to reach kind of kind of a rock bottom, where they are finally willing to kind of admit that what they're doing isn't working out, and they're willing to accept the help or the perspectives of others besides themselves.
Right.
Sometimes family can be successful with that, and sometimes this is something that needs to be dealt with by people like us.
Right. Right. And because we have the at least personally, we each have our own relationship with the Lord. And so we know what that is going to look like for us. And so when we start seeing these things that are super unhealthy and not okay, right?
Mhm.
It's such a delicate place to move. I mean, I can also recall another client very similar, but it went well, right?
Yeah.
And so and she was able to walk away from that unhealthy organization that really was not a good one to be part of. But you're right. It just really does matter. People and people invest, right? Like you're married, I'm married. We invest
Yeah.
in our spouse, right? We do.
Mm.
Like and it's supposed to happen that way. And through that investment is this really strong bond or this tie, right? But we could take that into everything. I invest in my job, not just the business, but just what I do in that room in that moment, right? I'm in that moment, just like you do, and you're so investment's kind of across, it's kind of like this huge thing and it kind of can come down small or personal, right? But it's just that investment. But if you invest in these places, right, that are unhealthy, right? Or in these
Yes.
activities that are unhealthy, then what we got is we got, people doing things that now they're going, oh no, it's destroying my relationships that are meant to not be destroyed. And so when you kind of begin to point some of those out, some of them are ready, but it's kind of like the 12 steps, right? The first four are pretty tough. That recognition of like the 12-step program. So I think that like once they get to that place where now they're realizing that, wow, yeah, I really have made a mess of this, right? Or I'm really, or even kind of flip that. I'm really thankful that I'm no longer engaging in that. And I prefer to have that statement, really. So,
Yeah.
so, but I think that too, when people make those final decisions, I think that that either they'll come back or not come back, or they'll fix it, or they'll adhere to like at least do some investigation. Basically that client asked for us to do our homework that he asked, but he never came back. So I did do the homework. I did do everything he asked. just so I could share with him that I had done my part, but he never came back. And so I know he didn't. So it goes back to that scripture that I always will say, people will perish for the lack of knowledge. And I really believe that if we're not careful, I mean, it's not that I want to push my knowledge. It's not my knowledge, it's the truth. Like you can, okay, so this organization is isolating you from your family, right? That's not, it's kind of like, there's a control there that's not super healthy. So I think that those kinds of things can create that suffering, the identity issue. And many times I think people really do want hope. But when you go to give it to them, even if it really isn't done in a way that's really could be well received, sometimes they don't want to receive it. So, and that goes back to their own, that's their consequence, right? It has, and I can still rest my head on my pillow and know that I've done all the things I can possibly do. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean I say the right things, but it just means that I really, with an intentionality of the heart that the Lord would want from me, that I will say what I need to say. So that's pretty important. And then I really try hard not to have a bias. I think I do a pretty good job with that too, for the most part. I think it's really surprising for my married couples that I take care of. So like, because, before I had my staff, I did like one week I would do them individually, and then the next week I do them together, and then individually, and then together, right? And if they were working on their marriage, that's how I did it. Now, if they weren't working on their marriage, I'm sending one of you off somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
But that idea is, they're really surprised that I have no bias, that it's really neutral. And I might pick on so and so this time, and I pick on so and so the next time, but the goal is to bring them together and kind of see those differences and how to help maneuver that. So, and I think that through those pieces that's supporting them and coaching them and giving them the things that maybe they haven't had in a while that they didn't realize, like, wow, I've really missed out on that. A lot of times, like, they don't even know the questions to ask until all of a sudden they're there in that spot and they go, oh, I didn't even know I should have asked that,
So,
or kind of things.
and speaking of bias, it might also be a little beneficial to talk about bias from the patient perspective as well. You
Okay.
can have two providers that are giving the same exact information, talking about the same exact thing, but for one reason or another, the patient focuses on one provider negatively due to an aspect, whether it's religious preference, whether it's gender, whether it's due to, even race can cause it. But
Right.
what you, what ends up interfering with, them absorbing these messages can also be directly related to what's what they're there to be treated for. And, sometimes they're ready to receive it, sometimes they're not. Sometimes these people will come under the guise of seeking help, but they are actually seeking an audience, someone to listen to them without them actually investing in the actual change.
Yeah.
What
Mhm.
This is where kind of the topic of scope violations actually gets a little bit more tricky because for one, you want to be able to maintain a certain amount of objectivity and set boundaries with these people. And for two, you want to be able to make sure that you're not overstepping your own boundaries in terms of what you're willing to do to try to help them. I've worked with several of your clients at this point. Sometimes,
Yes.
it can get very intense, and sometimes, I'm willing to drive out to see you and the person in person, but sometimes distance can also be a better option because you don't want to kind of enable them to think that they're getting a certain reaction out of you that they want.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and this kind of goes into what we were about to talk about next: spiritual distress versus psychiatric symptoms. How much of anxiety, depression, problems with talking with others is due to an imbalance in like brain chemistry that needs to be adjusted with medication, and how much of it is due to history and personal decisions that are not being identified and recognized. How much of it is being informed by previous trauma, and how much of that trauma is preventing them from actually investing and having faith in the process of making themselves better. I I admit I don't have all the answers to everything. I don't know everyone's complete history. That's part of maintaining kind of a perspective of humility with treating these individuals as well, making sure that you understand that as educated as you can possibly be, you are never going to learn everything. You are never going to have all of the
No.
knowledge out there. You won't learn all of the cultures, you won't learn all of the languages, you won't learn all of the scientific materials, but approaching it from a perspective that, yes, you don't know everything, but what you do know maybe might be of service to the people you're trying to help.
That's right. And you're lucky to know what you need to know to do the session. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So forget, yeah, let's kind of narrow that one in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a scope violation too, right? Where we had an incident here actually, where a client recorded a session
Yeah.
and did not ask for it. And there's signs all over the place that says no cell phone usage, turn it off, no, not negotiable. And so we learned about it and we ended up terminating because that the clinician, she just felt like a betrayal of that process. And it's gotten kind of pretty ugly about like, there's been some ramifications on their side kind of coming at us a little bit, but that's okay. We believe we still did the right thing. We have the law on our side, actually. There's a lot to be said, and this is very important for clinicians to understand too. I've done a lot of homework now with my attorney because we've had to get her involved. But the violations of those kinds of things. State of Texas allows for one party recording, right? But unless it's in confidential settings, and it must be everybody has to agree. And so the law is definitely on our side and they're trying to come after us a little bit.
Mm.
Now that's one of the reasons why I updated all my paperwork. It's in there everywhere. Like it's just we're not playing. So, but I think
Yes.
those violations happen. And I think because, we're in a society today, we can take all the things that you just said. Somebody could be beat up on the street and everybody now takes out their phone and records it. Nobody
Yeah.
helps. Like we have lost our way, like in our society, like, right? We can call it cultural humility, but that's like insane. That's not humility. That's against all humanity to watch somebody completely be beat up versus back when I was a kid or even a young adult. Like if something like that happened, man, like it was stopped. Like it was like somebody came in and helped you to your aid. Nobody recorded you. Like now it's just all of that. So I think that there is those violations that kind of happen across the board where people just really think, and it's okay. That's another violation. Like, I could go into so many things about that, right? When people have their phone in their pocket and all of a sudden it buzzes and then their hand goes in their pocket and they're turning it off. No, they've lost track where you are. Like, so I just really feel like even across the way of like even how we kind of handle some of these things, I think that people just really have a weird idea of what things should look like because, society says it's okay. Yeah, but not in this
Oh,
room, right? Like, so I
yeah.
think that sometimes, and that's where it does get a little bit heated sometimes, right? Because they're
So,
being taught something in the room that is not in their norm of what they've been told, which is kind of some of the things you talked about, right? And I so
yeah.
agree. Like there are some times where I feel like, wow, this session really is going, it's kind of rough. But it's
Well,
but I think it's rough in a good way, right? Like,
mm,
wow, and we do a really good job at pulling in, and I think, but sometimes, it's up to that client to really kind of see those things, and hopefully at least see it from a perspective, but we do care about them when that does happen. So sometimes a collaboration it can really get to where it's intense, but the intensity it might be necessary, and so I think
so,
clients see that too.
and I like to stress that there's also a difference between cultural humility and cultural respect. And we're not
No,
necessarily
sure.
talking about cultures in terms of like countries or races or things like that, but
Right.
even with like professions, you get people that will come to us seeking our help. They will kind of disregard or disrespect our sense of time or the other people that we're
Right.
trying to help by showing up late. They will answer phones in the middle of appointments. They will basically demonstrate through their actions a lack of dedication to what they're there to get help for. And
Sure.
when you point that out, when you point out that, you know, they're showing up late to appointments, they're not doing the homework for therapy that is being given to them, there, or if they're doing it, they're going at a very slow rate, then suddenly it shifts to a perspective of this person is attacking me and not why is this person bringing it up to me.
Right. Right.
So
Right. Good,
these are
good
some,
point, mister. Good
yeah,
point.
these are some of the things that kind of interfere with getting a good outcome for the people that come to us for help. Is it seems like there's a, if it's not outright apathy towards like the society or the world, it's a lack of respect for people other than themselves, a
Yeah.
lack of, or even a lack of empathy for the for people that are trying to basically help them out or help others.
You know, that word empathy really gets me sometimes. I think it's been so misused, I swear.
Yes.
Like, if you don't agree with me, you don't have empathy. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
but, I just like, I don't have to agree with you, nor do you have to agree with me, but it has nothing to do with my empathy. Like, we're
No.
misused that, right? Like, I feel like, oh my
Exactly.
gosh. So, yeah, a little bit of a trigger there, Mr. Michael. Okay,
No
so,
worries.
um, um, very good. So, teaching supervisees how to hold spiritual content competently. So, like, these are some things that I do on a regular on my side so that I feel like they know where the balance is, right? But
Yeah.
so many, I promise you, Michael, everyone that comes that now works for me for sure, but those that are getting ready to be interviewed, they are so excited that we're faith-based because they can be themselves. They actually are so excited, like they can come in and be who they are, truly who they are, and not have to like put that away. Some of their internships that they've been in before they graduated, like it's just been really a rough road for them. So I'm really thankful for my supervisees and they get this opportunity to be them. And and if they want me to pray with them or them pray with me, whatever, or it doesn't have to be with the client, just the space that they're working in is so healthy for them. They love it. I hear that anyway, right? And so I
Yeah.
always ask God just to keep me in check, right? Make sure that I'm a good boss and do those things, But I think that that's really um, understanding for them. Okay,
Mm.
so um, supervision, leadership, modeling, integration. So some of this kind of is more like my side kind of things that we do on
Okay.
this side, but I'm sure the modeling of integration, I think that kind of we just kind of hone in on that. Leadership for sure. We both are strong leaders. I really believe that, and I think that we really do have a what do you call it? Like a uh, we're I've just lost my word actually. So sorry about that. But
It's okay.
when you're you're sure, um, strong leader. There's a word I want to. I'm just losing it. But anyway,
Self
but
assured.
it's that there's assured, yes, but that's it's more like confidence, that's the word,
Okay.
like the leader in the confidence of what we do while we lead, right? So that even in that room, that leadership piece, right, that we're leading, we own the room, right? I mean, essentially we do, right? We want to control it so it doesn't get haywire and go waylaid, right? So the
Yeah.
idea is that we want to do those things and kind of make those things happen. But even with those that we're working with, whether that's with me or you're working with my other folks. But what I would like to kind of ask you, and we can kind of see how this might work here, but I really want to encourage other clinicians that might be listening to this video today that, the idea of like integrating or collaborating together and how we can do these treatments, like, it is rare. It's rare that the relationship you and I have. It's not something that's easily found, but what would you say to other clinicians, or even to other psychiatry like you, about the to encourage this type of relationship?
I would say that if this is the type of relationship that clinicians and therapists want to have with one another, or prescribers and therapists want to have with one another, then there needs to be a shift away from larger treatment settings. In like hospital settings, larger inpatient psychiatric settings, this goes back to what I was saying before, that the workload is so overwhelming for providers and even for therapists in those settings that they don't have the time to really sit down and talk with one another about the people that they're trying to help. They do the notes, they put the notes in and document like they're supposed to. But even doing so, one or both sides don't have the time to actually review what the other person is writing, at least not in depth.
Right.
And speaking firsthand, I've watched clinicians or get notes from therapists, and even in outpatient psychiatric setting, that they review very briefly. They don't go into depth. They don't get a chance to call the therapist and talk to them one on one to find out what's going on. And it's like, to me, that's kind of like saying that you want to make like a five-star dinner, but you're going to ignore major ingredients to do so. You're going to not use the oven to cook that turkey. You're not going to use any seasoning. You're not going to do anything with like to make the vegetables spicy or anything like that. It's removing a major resource that causes the overall outlook to suffer. And if
Right.
if if you're wanting to do that, it needs to stay small. I mean, I've actually thought about hiring or bringing in some people under my practice's name to try to bring in to work with you or other therapists that I work with. It's not someplace I'm quite at yet, but it's something that I'm looking at doing. But it would be with the understanding that they use the similar kind of approach that I do. They're in terms of
Mhm.
how they interact with the patients, that's completely up to them. I trust their styles, but this would be mandatory.
Right. It's a branding.
Yeah.
It's a branding, and then something that we found is successful. That's why it's like this is the paperwork we're going to use. This is I don't Your approaches can be your individual style, but you can't mislead
Yes.
or take away from the actual branding that's happening here, because this is why we're busy. This is why you're
Yeah.
hired, because we're busy because of the branding, right? So
Yeah.
that's what that beat, and I'm proud of you. That's awesome. Yes,
Yeah.
because you want to make sure you don't compromise. That's a good word. Don't compromise your branding for the very thing of what you want to do for the population of people, that whoever walks through your door, like whoever
Yeah.
that is. Yep, absolutely.
And
Yes.
approach it with a mutual level of respect, consult one another
hmm
on a regular basis, check in on mutual patients on a regular basis. I mean, in most cases, psychiatry providers are going to be meeting much less frequently with the patient than a therapist. It's like you said, it's very rare that someone will meet with their patient, like a prescriber meets with their patients as regularly as you and I do. And
Right. Or for more than
why,
5 minutes.
yeah, and why ignore like 50 plus hours of therapy and insights that that therapist has to provide
hmm
because you're not wanting to put in the effort to do so. And
Yeah.
this, this goes into what we were talking about at the very beginning with like problems between different career paths, problems with mutual respect, or feeling like one side has been slighted over another. To just it creates a culture of being isolated and instead of a culture of unity.
Right. I'd agree.
And
I remember early on in my practice. My practice is 11 years old, July or January 2nd. January 2nd was our anniversary. It was pretty cool. But I want to say maybe in 2016, I had a client, a young man, um, and I really believe that the psychiatrist had him on the wrong medications. Right. So
Yeah.
I did my full intake, which is 11 pages, and it's very comprehensive. I feel like I grab every little piece of detail I can possibly get, which is rare for for many counselors to do this kind of an intake. And so then I called, I got a release to be able to talk to them and them to talk to us. And when I talked to the doctor, he just told me I was an idiot therapist, that I didn't know what I was talking about. So when I sent over the document, um, then he told me that the client lied to me. Well, the very next like month, the client like nearly like it was bad. It was a bad situation. So and he was on the wrong meds, and it was increasing his HI in such a way really
Yeah.
bad, right? So he was actually sent to an alternative school because of the situation, right? Well, it
Yeah.
turns out that they ended up admitting him, and sure enough, it was the medication that he was on that he shouldn't have been on because it really wasn't what he had.
Yeah.
And so, and once they took him off of it, he ended up then going back to public school. He stayed at the alternative for a little bit, but he was able to finally go back. So at 19, he graduated high school. Most kids would have just dropped out. But
Exactly.
because somebody invested in them, somebody believed in them, but they never went back to the, I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of like, and I'm not all that in a bag of chips, I know, but I pay attention, and
Yeah.
I want my people to know that I care for them. But at the same time, I just don't think that it was, I just think this idea of that you stay in your lane and I'll stay in mine and we'll never cross, and that you don't know what you're talking about. Like, well, I spend a lot of time with these people, just like you mentioned, right? Like I do. And so I feel like at some point there's some leverage somewhere in there to kind of say, "Well, maybe I need to relook at this. But whatever that, anyway. So I think that there's some of that happens. All right, so we're rounding the corner and we're going to kind of try to finish up here and kind of see what's left, right? So let's take that little case that you said, that little case study that you talked about, that young person, or kind of like,
Yeah.
well, millennial, I guess. You're a millennial though, aren't you?
I'm born in the mid '80s, so I don't know if I would be
No,
considered.
no, no, you're probably you're an X like I am.
Mm,
You're the end of the X's.
okay.
I didn't even know. Like it was funny because my husband's the end of the boomers, and then there's the millennials. I'm like, well, what am I? Like I'm in between. Like so like we're right there. That's pretty cool. Okay. So anyway, integrated healing and action. So apply the philosophy. And so we kind of talk about some of the things that happened with that person who chose not to really hear what we had to say or come back and kind of work through the rest of the stuff. His mood did dysregulate when we began to talk about those hard things. I do remember that, right? And
Yeah.
so, and he kind of got sunken back in his seat, and he just didn't really like look at you or look at me, kind of those things, right? And I think that the spiritual struggle definitely was there, but I think um, the loss of meaning for what we were doing with him was also there. I think it was a both
Yeah.
and. And
Mm,
so, but I do believe that our approach was right. I think
yeah.
we took our time to get to the spot. We thought it was going to be a good moment.
Yeah.
I don't regret a minute of it, honestly. I'm sad that he didn't come back, but those are his choices. They're not mine. And then the physical health concerns, I don't know, right? I don't really know what's happening there. I mean, obviously,
Same
but
here.
he really struggled with proper sleep. He really struggled with staying on task. He really struggled with a lot of those things. So I really believe that like how we really approached him was the best way um, that we knew how to do, right? But at sometimes, we could want the world for everybody, right? But they have to engage. They have to want it for themselves, and we can want it
Yeah.
all day long, dude. That ain't gonna matter. But yeah, I really believe that at least even when you're not with me, I often wonder, like, sometimes I hear you in my head, like, not even with our client, maybe with other clients you've never met yet, right? Like, what would Michael think here? Like, because sometimes there are some really difficult, like, nuances that I go, Oh, and then you've taught me so much. You just taught me so much. And so that's pretty cool too. I like that.
And
But no, I agree. So, kind of just looking at our clients and kind of seeing where they are. I mean, we've had a couple of them where we were really interested in even going the extra mile to help kind of do something that would be normally not in our scope to do, to go
yeah,
help people. So yeah,
do you
yeah.
do you feel okay? It might be a good idea to kind of talk about a case study with a positive outcome. I had a specific one in mind, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's do that.
You referred a another patient to me. This person was in college, and the amount of medications that this person was on was bordering on the outrageous side. I want to say they were on what, 7 or 8 different medications for mental illness. They came to me despite the meds. They were pulling out their hair. They were depressed. They were
Mm,
anxious.
hmm
They were isolating themselves like romantically and sexually. And after a while, we were eventually able to get them down to just 2 medications. One of them was
Yes.
just an as needed
So
medication.
awesome. Right.
Yeah. Person's hair started growing back. The ticks started going away.
Hmm
They are still dealing with their difficulties, but they're actually at a place where they're willing to recognize it and work through it. And they were even able to understand why some of the things that they were doing were being motivated by certain decisions and certain past history, which is a
Right.
huge step for a lot of people. A lot of people, it takes a long time for them to understand that maybe why I'm doing this is because this happened to me, or
Right.
maybe why
Right.
I'm isolating myself is because of this reason. And
Yes.
so, I mean, in that case, there's already been a huge amount of progress with this person. I am so proud of them. They are doing
Me too.
much, much better.
Me too. I'm
Yeah,
extremely, yes,
yeah.
by far, by far, and it was kind of interesting why I ended up putting you into their, like, presenting you to them, right? I'm like, man, she's on another medicine. Like, what the heck? This
Mm,
is and I looked him up. I looked up the medications, right? And I'm going, oh, these collide. This is not okay. Like, okay, halt, right? So I called the mom. I said, listen, I know your daughter's giving me permission to talk to you, but I really think we need to change up something. So are you interested in getting a second opinion? And so here we are, like, and look at that, right? And so I think as clinicians, we should trust ourselves. We should trust ourselves enough to know that, hey, there's something wrong here, and maybe we can have the empowerment to get them, to help them see and maybe make some of those changes. But sometimes, again, it goes back to that thing. Sometimes they don't know that they should ask. They don't know what they don't know until all of a sudden, like, ooh, like
yeah,
now we talk to her and she's pretty, this client, like, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing. Anyway,
yeah.
um, anyway, so that it's really good. You're so right, and that's beautiful because there was so much. I remember this person telling me what they were gonna wear for prom, their senior year, and the next week, like, there was this massive bald spot on her head. And I went, what the heck happened? Like, full, like, everything had grown back. This is probably the third time in my time with her. And okay, I need Michael. I need Michael. I need Michael like I need air. Like, that was, and it was important. And here it was, like, just getting her to a place where she could start regulating for herself and taking care of the things for herself and thinking clearly. Like, I think, remember when this person said, I didn't know what I was really feeling. Like, yeah, bless her heart. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good. You're so right. That's a good one to kind of like round the corner with, for sure. Okay, so let's leave the listeners inspired, okay, and grounded, right? What are some things that you can do to help make that happen?
Well, first of all, you come to us for help. You come to therapists or prescribers for help. Sometimes the prescriber isn't a good fit. We get that. Sometimes the therapist isn't a good fit. We get that. But there's a difference between not being a good fit and not recognizing that what they're telling you is to your benefit, and even though it might be hard to hear. So having kind of a more global approach to it, having a more open-minded approach to it, understanding that things that are brought up, whether positive or negative, are meant to be there to kind of help you get a better understanding of yourself as a whole, not just your depression, not just your anxiety, but also why you feel the good things, why you respond the way you do to things like praise, why you respond the way you do to, you know, getting punished or feeling like you're not recognized. And this is where the holistic care kind of comes in. If you can have a clear thought, if you can have your concentration improved or your depression or anxiety improved, even a little bit with some medication so that you can focus better on what the therapist is trying to teach you, that's going to help you. If you can do the therapy, it's going to make it so you eventually need less medication or you can get off of it entirely. There's a general rule of thumb I follow with practice where if someone is unwilling to do therapy, if they're unwilling to take a harder look at themselves, then the likelihood of them getting off of medication on their own, staying off of it for the rest of their life, is next to nothing.
I
You're not
agree.
likely to get the benefit.
I
So
agree.
working with multiple specialties, it strengthens your outcome. It strengthens your ability to be able to stand on your own eventually. It helps you get a safer, clearer outcome with what to expect, and it helps you get a better understanding of what's realistic in your specific cases. Sometimes we have certain things we have to work in with in terms of realism. I mean, it's not realistic for me to tell you, for example, that as a businesswoman, you need to limit the amount of hours in office and driving around to these different places and going and having these meetings with multiple providers and checking in with everyone, and to you know it, it's not realistic for me to tell you to not do any of that just because you're anxious. It's not realistic of me to tell you that
Right.
you know your mood is going to improve completely if you're dealing with physical illnesses like you were talking about before with the black mold. Having an understanding of what is attainable and having an understanding of the steps you can take to get there, that's going to make you feel empowered to take those changes.
I agree.
That's going to make you feel like you're able to engage your mind, your body, and your spirit towards the outcome that you're looking for. And that's what we're here for. We, if you are running into a prescriber or a therapist who's telling you that, there's no good outcome, or they're honestly telling you that they expect you to be there every week for like the next 5 or 10 years, that's not someone who's invested in you getting better. That's someone who's invested in them getting a paycheck.
Right.
I would
Right. I
rather,
agree.
yeah, I mean, if you were miserable in like living in a certain state, or you wanted to move back home to be with family out of state, I would rather you were not seeing me and moving back home to be with a family that you love and be around them than coming to me every week and ignoring what you know will make you feel better.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, Michael, you just hit the ball out of the park. Hey, how can people find you? What are some ways that people can find you to get the help that you so amazingly do?
So the easiest way would actually be to probably look for my practice's Google listing. It's called Helm Psychiatry in Houston.
How do
I
you
see
spell
people
that? Spell that.
HELM
Okay.
Psychiatry.
Hmm.
It's I see people virtually and in person. I see people across the state of Texas. I'm also pretty flexible with my hours. I'll see some people on the weekends, like I'm doing with you tomorrow, and uh, that'll take you to actually not only my Google reviews, which I think I've got a 4.9 star rating right now, and
Me
it'll also
too.
link yeah, it'll also link you to my Headway page where I do a lot of my insurance credentialing and my scheduling and billing through there. For other billing things, I have a site on a place called Alma, which is for like self-pay clients. But
Hmm.
even if you have difficulty with those, you can find me on Psychology Today, where you can email me or call me directly, and I'll help you set up the appointment if you're having some problems.
Yeah. Very good. Well, and those that might be looking for Illuminated Pathways, you can find us at illuminatedpathways-therapy.com. That's
Mm.
ILLUMINATED pathways dot dash therapy dot net actually dot net. I said that wrong actually. Wow,
Okay.
that's crazy.
Okay.
So illuminated pathways dash therapy dot net. And you can call 972-768-0754. We'll have somebody ready to answer the phone for you. Um, so yeah, how exciting, Michael. Thank you so much for taking time to be with me and do this little podcast today. It's very valuable. I believe that it will help a lot of people, at least give them a chance as clinicians even, or even psychiatry even, to maybe see how this works and then maybe even who knows what client might see this that we might have in the future that will want us to help take care of them.